Well, hello and welcome here to worship at Wahoo First United Methodist Church. I'm so excited that you have been able to join us this morning or this evening or whenever you're watching this for worship here this Easter season. So before we get into our main content and message for today, we have a couple of announcements as a church family. The first of which is, if you have any ideas or suggestions for how we can improve what we are offering right now as a church in this time, if you have any suggestions about things that we could doing, things we could tweak, things we should stop doing, really anything at all, we would love to hear it. So if you have anything like that, please feel free to call the church office, leave us a message, we will hear it and get back to you. Or you can comment below or send a message any other way you can get a hold of us. We would love to improve what we are offering here and how we can help be the church in this time. So then second, we have just finished up our first week of our First Peter Bible study through Zoom that we launched last Thursday. So if you missed that, but you still want to jump in, you can absolutely jump in. There's a registration link below, however you're watching this, or has been emailed out to you. So I know that we had a lot of fun, the group that we had this past Thursday as we walked through chapter 1 of 1 Peter, and we're looking ahead toward doing chapter 2 this next week. And so if you want to jump in, you can absolutely come on board that Bible study. All right. So then by way of a final announcement, I want to set up what you're about to see as our main message. What we had originally planned... What we had planned months ago as a church, me along with the members of our local church's foundation board, we had reached out to the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation, and we asked if they were to have someone who could come out and could preach for us in the pulpit in the sanctuary here on April 26th and could tell us about the mission and ministry of the foundation. And then to talk about what it means to leave a legacy that lasts beyond our own lives into the next generation. So obviously we're not able to gather in the sanctuary for worship like we had planned, but I still reached out to the foundation and we sat down for an interview here in my office. And so that's what you're about to see. So I sat down with Reverend Dr. Matt Fowler. He's the Director of Stewardship with the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation, and we talk a little bit about what they do, what our local church foundation does. We kind of get into different ways you can support the church, you can leave a legacy for all those things that touch your heart and that God has called you to. Then we go a little bit into how all this ties into the 1 Peter study that we're doing as a church. 1 Peter is all about how we find hope, how we find perseverance, how we hold on to something that lasts. That's what we talked about last week as we talked about the inheritance that Christ has given to us that is imperishable, unfading, and undefiled. Then so Matt and I get into what it means for us to leave an inheritance that mirrors that inheritance that Christ gives to us. So I hope that you are blessed by that conversation. If you want to know more about it, there will be information at the end of our interview. So next week we'll be back on track with our 1 Peter Bible study, and we'll talk about the living word which God has given us, which carries through from when Peter wrote those words all the way to us today. So without further ado, here is that interview with Reverend Dr. Matt Fowler. Well, good morning, everybody. I am here this morning with Reverend Dr. Matt Fowler.
Thank you.
If you could share what your title is with the Nebraska Methodist Foundation and what you do there, and maybe the larger mission and ministry of the foundation.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be helpful.
I am the Director of Stewardship for the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation. am an ordained elder in the Great Plains Conference. I've been a pastor here in Nebraska for 24 years, so I have had the opportunity to be as far west as Scotts Bluff and as far east as Omaha, and a lot of different places in between. I'm a preacher's kid, so Cole Fowler being my dad, we've had an opportunity to cover a lot of space. I started at the foundation this last September, so I've got about 6-ish months of opportunity of engaging in conversation. My thank you, Pastor Michael, for inviting me to be a part of your worship service today. I always appreciate the invitation, so thank you.
Of course.
I don't get to preach very often. I don't get to be in churches very often speaking. So when Pastor Michael called me, well, of course, I jumped at the opportunity. So you have a very gracious and wonderful pastor, if you all didn't already know that. Did that seem like
you read off the script perfectly?
Did I go?
Thank you for reading the script I gave you.
You're welcome. You can
the
pay me back.
teleprompter is working well.
It is. That's great. I love those teleprompters. The mission of the foundation and the ministry is to empower local churches and pastors and individuals to do God's work, specifically in the state of Nebraska. We accomplish that in a number of ways. We do offer grants, scholarships. We do things. Our scholarships, we just included some new local pastor scholarships, which we didn't have before. And as we have more local pastors filling pulpits for us out of their hearing God's call, they still have to go to school. And so they still have costs. And so we were able to put in 4 new local pastor scholarships. Great. Yeah, so we're excited about that. We'll be offering that for this coming fall's class. We also do grants. We actually just did some emergency fund grants. We got about 140 churches in the state of Nebraska that we were able to give $300 grants to each one of the churches, just to help them however they needed that help. Obviously, $300 isn't going to fund a whole budget, but it's also going to help in certain places where you got to meet certain needs in the immediacy. So we try to help that way. We do new church grants and new ministry grants. So if the conference works to start a new church in the state, we're there to help. If the conference helps a local church start a new ministry, we help with that as well. There are certain steps that are involved there, but we also have grants that are ministry grants, and if you fill out the paperwork and send it in, we're able to help with the mission and the ministry that the churches are about. So those are some of the big ways that we try to help that way. But the other side of the coin is that we talk with churches about how do we help you figure out how to fund the mission and the ministry that you are about. And so we spend a lot of time talking about, okay, how would you invest with the foundation, with your funds, that we can put them in a place that helps you. And I think the most important part to recognize about that, first and foremost within the foundation, is to understand that if you invest your funds, they're always your funds. They are never the foundation's funds. They are certainly never the conference's funds. They are always your funds. So if you came and said, we want to open up an account with you today, Matt, great, we would open that up. And then tomorrow the air conditioner goes down and it's the middle of the summer, you can come right back to the church, to the foundation, and say, yeah, we actually need that because we need to put in a new air conditioner. And within 24 hours, we're handing you back all your money. So I always think that's most important, is to understand your funds are always your funds. But we do work with you to figure out, okay, do you have some short-term hopes? Do we have some long-term hopes? Do we have some things that, you know what, we might have a rainy day sometime, and we just need to put some funds away that are going to earn, some money for us, that when the day comes that the rain does start to fall, we know we can draw off of those funds.
So I don't know if everyone in the church knows this, but we have a local church foundation, that we have invested our funds with the Nebraska Methodist Foundation.
Yes.
And that allows us to do our own, to be in mission and ministry here in our community in a wider area through the opportunities that you guys provide, and allows us to dream as well, have those long-term vision, those long-term goals that we want to do, and plan for that future. I know that we have a couple different scholarships that we offer in our church through our foundation for graduating seniors, and for seminary students, and for our elementary students to go to Camp Fontenelle. That we open up those scholarships when they're invested well by the Nebraska Foundation. It helps us to be able to do that and to sustain our church as well and help us with our own mission and ministry here in the church. So I know that one of the things that you also help, I know you you helped me in this church back last fall with their annual stewardship campaign as well, advising us on how to roll it out, maybe how to talk about it, how to inspire people to support this local church, which was very helpful. And so I know that I've talked to you before about the different pockets of giving.
Yes.
We talk about annual giving, then talk about. So I'm the one who just brought this up, but I feel like I just walked into a test that I have not prepared for. I just said one of the pockets. Other pocket would be capital giving, like for capital projects. Am I right so far?
You're doing
I got 2
very
out of
well.
3.
You are doing very well.
And the third one is legacy giving, correct?
Correct. You aced the test.
Fantastic. Okay. And so that is especially what we do when we decide that we want to leave a legacy that will outlive us, that will outlast us. And I know that's one of the big areas of the Nebraska Methodist Foundation is to encourage and inspire and equip people to get ready for that legacy giving. And so the plan was actually to have Matt come up and preach in front of us if we were in person here today for worship. Obviously, that's not happening. And so I wanted to give him the opportunity maybe to talk about maybe the importance of legacy giving, what it's about, why we do it, why we feel led to do it, and maybe different avenues for that. That's all right, Matt.
Absolutely. I think the importance of when we start to look at a legacy gift and estate plan, and I believe this about anything we do within the church, it always starts with prayer. And it starts with our own individual conversation with God. What is it God is placing on your heart that God is calling you to do to care for the local church? The realities of it is that we all will go to be with the saints. There will be a day when we all get to sit around God's table and enjoy that meal together and just be in the glory of God's splendor. And when that day comes, while we are enjoying that, how have we helped the church that we're no longer in? How have we helped them to continue the mission and the ministry? Because we all have those things that are in our hearts that are important to us. Some people love Vacation Bible School because they love that Sunday when all the kids come in, and they sing their songs and they're wearing their t-shirts, and maybe you get to see some of the props, and there's just this new fun, and all the parents and the grandkids, parents are taking pictures, and you want to make sure that joy gets to happen. So maybe part of your estate gift, when you leave it to the church, you say, you know what, I want those funds to work for Vacation Bible School, or the choir is important to you. That really feeds your soul when you listen to music that's happening, or another mission or a ministry that's really important to you, a Bible study and outreach. All of those things come into play when you start thinking about your estate and what you want to do and how you want to leave that to the church. I think that when we do that, when we think about that, we're not necessarily thinking about a dollar figure, while that might be part of it. We all have come to recognize how volatile the market can be. And sometimes our investments and our retirement funds can be really strong one day, and the next day they may not be as strong as what we had hoped they to be. So usually we encourage folk to think about percentages. If I'm going to leave my estate, I want to leave a certain percentage of my estate to my church for a mission or a ministry. Or you say, you know what, I have faith in my local church. I know the leadership and the pastor. You know what? They're going to use my funds to the best way possible. And so sometimes folks leave a gift just to say, here, I trust you with my funds to do what's best. Now, there are a number of ways that you can do that. Usually, people, the most familiar with folks is by leaving it in your will. Leaving as you're giving to the family and friends and other nonprofits that you might place, you put the church in your will as well. And so that's usually the most familiar. That being said, any number of things can be left to the church through your will. Not just cash or your checking account. There can be stocks, property, life insurance policies, any number of things that are of value that you want the church to have, you can leave in your will for the church to handle to continue the ministry that is important to you. But I really do believe that it starts first with your conversation with God and knowing what God has placed on your heart and being comfortable with what the legacy is in the future. What is it that you want your church to remember you as, and how you continue to support your church beyond those days?
That's great. So I know everyone watching this probably knows that we are reading through the letter of 1 Peter right now as a congregation, and we read Peter's words last week about how we have a living hope in Christ. I talked about how we have an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, is what Peter says. And so, so because of that, I'm so glad we have the Nebraska Foundation, we have our local church's foundation to enable us to keep that inheritance going, to keep that hope alive. It's so nice that we can think about, how we want. I'm thinking of so many of us in the church right now who have been part of this church for decades, who have a tremendous legacy built up through faithfulness in all the various missions and ministries of the church. And so we can talk about how that legacy, how that inheritance will continue on. We find a lot of hope and perseverance in 1 Peter in hard times like we're in now. And so it's nice to be, as we read through that, to hear about the mission and ministry of the Nebraska Foundation and our local church's foundation, to talk about how that can enhance that that hope and that perseverance that we have.
Yes, that is one of the most important things to recognize is Peter, God, Christ's call for us to continue moving forward. We're never invited to just say, okay, well, we're here, and we're going to sit down right here because this feels like a good spot. That's just not how we're called to be. We're called to continually build God's kingdom here on earth, and to recognize the gifts that we are given are always there to be utilized, to be maximized in our outreach and in our care of one another, recognizing those gifts are there, but those gifts are to continually be utilized. We can't just sit back and say, well, I've made it, I'm done. Nope. God has a dream and a hope for us each and every single day while we're here, and we need to continue moving forward to whatever it is God is calling, no matter how young or old we are, utilizing those gifts, which cannot be tarnished, which cannot be taken from us, which always have a use. God created us with special gifts and abilities. They're ours. We always get to use them.
That's fantastic. I know you talked about maximizing those blessings, and I think that is one of the things the Nebraska Foundation does so well. And so, Matt, if anyone who's watching this right now wants more information about what they can do, either to leave a legacy or more information about what the foundation does, where could they go to get more information, other than talking to me? It's obviously a great way, but then beyond that.
Right. You all are a wonderful resource, actually, for the foundation. You have a couple of folks who are members of your church.
We do.
Who are part of the board. And I won't name names, but Lauren and Jean, I just called you out right there. You all probably know who they are. They're a wonderful resource in terms of how the foundation works. But you can also go to our webpage. That's NUMF, Nebraska United Methodist Foundation, NUMF.org, and you can find a lot of stuff about us there. You can give us a call. You can email us. All that information, again, is on the webpage. We have a Facebook account. We post things on there for social media that we think is helpful and insightful. Hopefully you think that. And so those are probably the strongest ways. Our executive director, Jackie Urkowski, is always open and looking forward to talking to anybody and everybody. Recognizing right now social distancing and the ability to just stop by isn't necessarily the easiest, but hopefully when those things are taken off of us, you'll come by and see us. We'd love to have people stop by and visit, give us a call. I hope that the day will come when we get to do all of this, but we do it on a Sunday morning when we get to be in the sanctuary together and enjoy some ministry together, some fellowship together, and to talk about some other things as well. I did notice that your pastor is a big Oklahoma State fan. For the record, I am wearing my Husker red, so if there's any wondering as to where my allegiances do lie, my road leads to Lincoln.
Mine leads through Lincoln on the way to Oklahoma. If that's worth anything at all.
That's important too.
I have to drive through. I was told before I moved up here that on game day, Memorial Stadium is the third biggest city in Nebraska. So that is incredible. We can all agree that at least I'm not a Sooner.
That is true.
And then we can all have that at least.
That is true. That works to your advantage to be a Gundy fan and not a Switzer fan.
Exactly. I know you guys left the Big 12 after 2010, and you guys beat us in our homecoming in 2010 on the way out the door. So if anyone has hurt feelings, it might be.
We give nothing but love. We give nothing but love.
Thank you so much, Matt, for coming and for sharing with us here. And so I'm so excited for what we will do together and for what the foundation has in store for it. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you for letting me be a part. I do. I appreciate all that you all are doing with us, and I do look forward to our continued relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt.